So we've learned now about adaptations, about how living things are adapted to survive in the environment, in the ecosystem, in the habitat that they live in, right? Those three words kind of all mean something fairly similar. But things fit in with their habitat, and every single physical trait or behavior that they have fits in with that way of living, or they wouldn't survive, right? And if they didn't survive, they wouldn't be able to pass their traits to the next generation. And so that trait might die out if they didn't fit in. So that's what we're going to get to now. We're going to get to one of the most important concepts in all of biology. It's called natural selection. And the question is, things are adapted to survive in their environment. How did they get that way, right? How did life get the way that it is now? And so we're going to start off with this well-known chap. You know what kind of animal this is, right? You know what that is? That's right. That's a giraffe, right? And a giraffe, you may or may not know, eats a kind of a tree, particularly in Africa where it survives, the acacia tree. Now, here's something that's kind of interesting. The giraffe is adapted to eat the acacia, but the acacia is adapted not to get eaten by the giraffe, right? They kind of evolved together and sort of in this big arms race of who can survive, because any of the acacia trees, if they got eaten all up, they wouldn't survive, right? And so only the ones that can survive will be able to produce the seeds to make the next generation that will have their traits. And the giraffes, the ones that manage to eat, are the ones that will survive to have babies that look like them, right? That have the traits that they have. And so what we're going to get into, here's a short little video of just about the giraffe and the acacia. And if you look at how they're really kind of matched, the giraffe is really adapted to eat the acacia, and the acacia protects itself not just by having this height, but by having these massive thorns. Okay, so here comes a video clip about that.
The damage and loss inflicted on plants by animals, both large and small, is huge and never-ending. And plants, of course, do what they can to defend themselves. Some develop long, ferocious, needle-sharp spines. These, you might think, will be sufficient to deter anything. But not so. This tongue is so mobile that it can pick out the soft leaves from between the spines. This hide is so tough that even the sharpest spines don't puncture it easily. And these rubbery lips seem able to survive the most prickly of mouthfuls. The attacker, of course, is a giraffe, and it can reach leaves 15 feet above the ground. It's the tallest of all living animals. Such intensive grazing means that it's very difficult for plants here to grow much bigger than stunted bushes. Thanks to their thorny defences, some acacias do succeed in growing to maturity, and then they develop the umbrella shape, which is so characteristic of the East African grasslands. And now, at last, the acacia tree has some parts that even a giraffe can't reach. The branches up at the top in the centre. There, the acacia can save precious energy and reduce the scale of its thorny armaments. On the outside, the thorns are as long and as dense as anywhere, but in the middle of the crown, there are no thorns whatsoever.
So the acacia tree and the giraffe fit in together, and so you have like the thick rubbery lips, the tongue that is really long to be able to strip the leaves. Also the color of the tongue, look at that. That's so it doesn't get sunburned in the hot African sun, sticking his tongue out all that time. These eyelashes are just amazing. The thickest eyelashes that I know of in nature. Well, that's because it sticks its face right in a thorn bush. And those eyelashes are like little sensors to be able to detect those thorns because they don't want to get its eye poked out, right? And so the height now, that's the most famous one. About the giraffe is how the giraffe is really, really tall, right? It has the longest neck and long legs to be able to reach up to get to those leaves in the acacia tree. Now, the ancestors of the giraffe didn't have the long neck. There's still a surviving relative called the okapi, which looks like this. But if you get in archaeological digs and you look for ancient fossils and things like that back millions and millions of years, you don't see any long-necked giraffes in those fossils. You find things that are more commonly shaped like the okapi, right? So somehow or other, populations of things that are more what we might consider normal shaped, their neck bones. Look, it has the same exact number of neck bones in a giraffe as it has in the okapi. Same number that we have as human beings, except ours are compressed, and the giraffes are like really long. And so that long neck, how did that happen? Well, the idea here, again, if food was plentiful and there was no competition and hard times, all the babies survive. But the truth of the matter is, giraffes, they got to be able to reach those leaves, right? Because the tree is trying to get its leaves out of the reach of the giraffes by, well, it isn't trying. I say try. That isn't the right word. The ones that get all the leaves stripped off don't survive. The ones that have the higher leaves, the leaves don't all get stripped off. Therefore, it can produce seeds, and it can drop the seeds, and the plants that grow up will tend to have the higher leaves, right? And so what's happening is the acacia and the giraffe are kind of over millions of years shaping each other, right? What's happening is in this competition to survive, the ones that fit best to eat the acacia are the ones that survive. So if you have a situation where there's, say, a drought or something like that, and you have a population of giraffes where some have longer necks than others, well, it might do okay when things are like really all lush and plenty of food. But if you have a drought, if you have competition, difficulty getting enough food for everybody to eat, the ones with the shorter neck are not going to survive, right? So what ends up happening generation after generation, the ones with the longest neck survived, and they pass that long neck on to its next generation and to its offspring. That's the key point here. This is how they got that way. It's a process called natural selection, and it has to do with passing your genes to the next generation. It isn't like this short necked giraffe didn't go, oh, I better make my neck longer. It didn't decide to. It's not like the giraffe mom and dad were going, hey, let's have some longer neck babies. That's not what happened. It's just the ones that did have the longer neck tended to survive to be able to pass that longer neck to their next generation. And at generation after generation after generation, the species developed a longer neck. Now, some species might not develop a longer neck. They might have a different method of survival. They might, it all depends on what works is really what it comes down to. But the giraffe, isn't adapted like to climb up in a tree or anything of that sort. It's adapted to be able to get the leaves off of the tree. And that's a huge adaptation it has. And this is a process. It's called, life changing over time is called evolution. And that's what we'll get to the next slide.